be the mayor of Poulsbo. At the end of this year, I will have been mayor for 9 years. I'm in my third term. And I'm running for position 1, 23rd District legislative seat against Sherry Allen. And I'm doing so without taking campaign contributions. No, I haven't taken campaign contributions since 2007. 2007 was the last time I took money for campaigning. And so it's a word of mouth, kind of a grassroots, scrappy campaign. But I would appreciate you telling everybody about me if you like what you do tonight. Why did I get into politics to begin with? I got into politics because I got mad. And I got really mad. My family farm was annexed into the city of Poulsbo, and we were suffering huge development pressures in 2007. And what I found out was our codes and regulations inside the city limits of Poulsbo had not kept up with the time. And we had 2 different county officials tell us that we were going to lose our farm because of taxation. And so I got mad, and I got very busy, and I did my homework. I always try to do my homework. And ended up running for the city council. I was elected in 2008. And I was on the city council for 2 years and a year and a half or so. And I got mad again. This time I got mad over $42 million worth of debt for the housing authority when they didn't have to do it. It was a stupid decision by the Kitsap County Commissioners. And I know I'm being recorded, but I did not agree with the decision then, and I certainly don't agree with it now. And I saw what I consider to be financial imprudence going on all over Kitsap County, and specifically in the city of Poulsbo. So I ran for the mayor and I won. And I became mayor in 2010. And now this is 2018. At the end of this year, I'll be doing it for 9 years. And it is a remarkable honor to have that position. Now, why am I running now? Because I got mad again. And there seems to be a pattern, and at least I'm consistent. When the state legislature said that they did not have to show emails, and they did not have to promote the level of transparency that we in local government live with every day. And I had various legislators come to me and say, well, we're not going to give them up. We're not going to give up our emails. And I said, what the heck? What the heck? What are we doing here? Of course you're going to give up your emails. You're going to get sued, and you're going to give your emails up. And even in the face of a lawsuit, they all got together, and over a 24-hour period, the Republicans and Democrats alike basically tried to change the law so they wouldn't have to give up their emails. Now, every citizen in the state of Washington should be asking themselves right now, what's in those emails? What's in those emails? The other thing they did is they committed a whole series of actions behind closed doors. The state of Washington, the state legislature, has exempted themselves from 3 very important pieces of legislation. The first one is the Public Records Act, which says that you must disclose your records, but with certain, very important ability to redact. You don't want to be talking about rape victims. You do not want overtly medical information. Those kind of redactions are already available in the law. So that's the Public Records Act. But my emails are all open. In fact, before I took office as mayor in 2009, even before I took office, somebody did a public records request and asked for every one of my emails. It took me 6 months to go through them, to figure them out, to make sure that I was doing it right. Because, for instance, when you have communication with an attorney, that's a client privilege conversation, and that is redactable under Washington state law. Okay, so that's the first thing they exempted themselves from. I think the most important one they exempted themselves from is the Open Public Meetings Act. Now, I don't know if you're paying attention to what's going on in the Seattle City Council right now, but they kind of went behind closed doors here a little bit and, did a head tax. And then they kind of went behind closed doors again and decided it wasn't a good idea. Now, they're being fined right now for a violation of the Open Public Meetings Act. When the legislative body of a local jurisdiction gets together, and if there is a quorum present, you have to give notice, public notice. And it has to be, I think it's within a 24-hour period, so that the public knows that there is the legislative body, whether it be a city council or a commission or a board, all of these are subject to the Open Public Meetings Act, except the Washington State Legislature, which is not. They've exempted themselves. If they hadn't exempted themselves, the caucus structure would have never worked, right? Because a voting majority got together in a caucus when they said they weren't going to give up their emails. I think really that the newspaper organization screwed up. They picked the wrong law. They should have concentrated on the Open Public Meetings Act. But they put the Public Records Act. But the fact remains is the state legislature should be involved with both of those pieces. And the third one they exempted themselves is the Growth Management Act. Now, we local jurisdictions, especially in the 7-county area that requires buildable land analysis. This is technical stuff, guys. Buildable land analysis. We have to plan 6 and 20 years for infrastructure. We need to chart our growth. We need to figure out both how much employment and population we're going to take in our various jurisdictions, whether it be counties or cities. We have to do that. And then we have to plan for it. We have to figure out how we're going to pay for our sewer and our water and our roads. That's part of the Growth Management Act. Now, the reason why we have congestion on state highways, state-owned assets, is the state of Washington doesn't have to plan for that. They just let all heck break loose, like Gorse, like 305, like 104, like the state highways that we have in Kitsap County. And they do not have to plan for, as our community grows, how they're going to improve that infrastructure. So those are the 3 big kahunas, big legislative pieces that need to be either fixed or they need to adopt them themselves. And so I'm really, interestingly enough, I can't find it on TVW where the task force that they put together to do the Public Records Act, remember the governor vetoed it. They passed the law that said they were exempt. And then all heck broke loose, and the governor vetoed the law that they passed. So now they said that they would form a task force between the ACLU's on there, a bunch of civil libertarian types, newspapers, and legislators, and they're supposed to be having a task force that's been meeting. I think they've met once to how they're going to figure out how they're going to do the Public Records Act, how they're going to do the emails. You guys all need to watch that very carefully. You lose liberty very quickly when it goes dark. Are you hearing me? Okay? That's why I got mad, and that was the final thing that pushed me over. There was a bunch of other smaller things that have happened lately that I really found troubling. Some of them are pretty technical, but the Public Records Act is something that we all need to protect. Now, sometimes it's a real pain in the butt to do the Public Records Act if you're a local jurisdiction, digging through all those emails, making sure that the redactions are done correctly, going everywhere you can find to get the records to make sure that you do it right. But it is the only thing that keeps us free. It's the only thing that keeps our government honest, in my opinion. And I really begin to wonder why they aren't giving up their emails. What's in those emails? I mean, when it first happened, I thought, because I know Sherry Appleton, and I know Christian Lyons, and I know Drew Hansen, and I know Jesse Young, and I know Michelle Caldier. I mean, I know these people. I've worked with them. And Michelle Caldier and Jesse voted against it, right? They said they give their emails up. But the North End, the 23rd, which is where I'm from, all 3 of them said no, we won't give up our emails. That's very problematic. So that's why I'm running. I have a huge amount of experience linking state government to local government, because in the city of Poulsbo, I am mayor. I am what's called a strong mayor. A strong mayor effectively is a city manager. I manage the staff of the city of Poulsbo, and I do manage them. And long-term background is I have a degree in economics, I have the equivalent of a master's degree in computer science, and I've been managing businesses since I was 19. The first one was a donut shop. I was 19 years old, but I've been being a business manager and executive all of my life. So I'm used to running staffs and managing relatively good-sized organizations. So I understand the relationship, like the financial relationship between state and local government. I understand how it works. I know the laws that need to be fixed, like for instance the Growth Management Act. You know, there's 6 words, there's only 6, if you take out 6 words in that act, we wouldn't have the density and a lot of the congestion problems that we have. We wouldn't have the pressures that we have. It's just 6 words. Something to do with what's called reasonable measures. And it's a very easy fix. But that knowledge to shift between local and state government is very important. And I feel like I'd be a real asset there because I understand how the legislation works on the ground. And when they pass a law, you know, all government's local, right? I mean, it really is, you know. So I understand what works and kind of doesn't work. So that's me, that's my spiel, but I'd be more than happy to answer questions. Go ahead.
Is Daniel Hoden kind of trying to help you out, I heard?
Daniel floats in and floats out.
Okay. I know that he's expressed to me that he's pretty passionate about helping you. If
Yeah. Daniel and I got to know one another along with several other people during the Fast Ferry election.
Sure.
And but I think I saw Daniel a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
But yeah, he wants to help. But Daniel's from the South. I mean, this is a North End race, right?
Sure.
So, okay, what else can I?
I got a question.
Sure.
I think it was the city council you mentioned got fined for the.
Seattle City
Who pays
Council.
that fine? Does it come out of there?
No, it comes out of their general fund.
Will we pay it for them?
Yeah, of course. Just like, you know, I mean, when the legislature just couldn't get around to like fixing the school problem with McCleary and $100,000 a day fine, you know, we all pay for that, right?
We find ourselves.
We find ourselves. What else?
Now, the state legislation, you talked about the transparency thing they
Yes.
tried to pass. That did get vetoed by the governor,
Yes,
right?
it did.
Was there anything after that?
Well, what happened after that is they agreed that they'd put together this task force. And the task force is made up of a whole group of people, some pretty staunch some legislators, the news media, and I don't know if the Coalition for Open Government's on there or not. I think the ACLU's on it. The legislature often, when they're crafting complex legislation, will put together a committee to vet it, and they'll pick special interest groups that are affected by whatever that legislation was. I was asked to be on a task force of the state legislature, was it last year or the year before? I think it was the year before, regarding body cameras, because of the city of Poulsbo was the first in Kitsap County, and we had a little bumpy road with implementing body cameras. So I kind of turned into the resident expert for body cameras and how they affect or are implemented. And we still have our body cameras on. We've had them on for almost 5 years now. But they asked me to be involved in that. So go ahead.
What about CIT training, like crisis intervention training? Do you have patrol officers?
We have the CIT, the crisis intervention officer in the police. His name is Dave Shirk, and he 2-3 years ago was the leading awarded by his discipline crisis intervention officer in the state of Washington. In addition to that, the city of Poulsbo has their own mental health team. We have a project manager, and we have 3 mental health, which we call special navigators, which work with our police. In fact, they work with the police throughout Kitsap County. There's the one that's working in Bremerton, there's one that's working in Port Orchard, there's one that's shared between Bainbridge Island and Poulsbo. And what they do is they deal with people that are homeless or have mental health concerns, and then when the police run into them, and they work with the police to get them into services. And that's the City of Poulsbo program. We're the only city in the county that does that. So, go ahead.
Actually, I have a couple questions. So, one, what are your thoughts on the recent negotiations with school districts? Because the legislature within their McCleary fix did not put, they didn't define a pay scale, so they still left it open to negotiation. Have you followed that?
Yes,
What's
a
gone on
little
with
bit,
that?
yes, I have.
So what are your thoughts on that? Any thoughts on maybe evening out or tamping down unions' abilities to negotiate like they are currently, like making more of a solid pay schedule?
Well,
And
they just,
school safety as far as security guns, things like that.
okay, so let's take the easy one first, which is school security. I'm a firm believer in school resource officers. And well-trained school resource officers are invaluable in local schools. They get well-trained, and I really want to underscore that. If you get a good school resource officer will get to know kids and understand the currents and the eddies, the ebb and flow of the student population, and get to know the children. And they're very, very valuable, very helpful, if they're well-trained and if they know what they do. That's the first one. Second one is the ratio, or how the product, it's not product, it's the employment mix. They didn't, when they did McCleary, they just threw a big hunk of money out there, right? First of all, they front-loaded it too. They should have put it over both bienniums. Okay, that would have really helped the districts in their negotiation, because there's gonna be this huge grab, right, for the front end. Most of these contracts are either 2 or 3 years. So you grab at the front end, and then as the cash dwindles out on the back end, it's not gonna be sustainable. So you're gonna see some real problems next year. And where they just don't have the cash. But what they should have done is let local school districts talk about their employment mix. You know, does every school need 2.4 librarians? Does every school need X, Y, Z in the teaching staff? I believe a little more in local control, and that goes with school districts as well. And so they funded it, but they didn't give any flexibility at the local level about how they were really gonna use the money. It was simply gonna go to the education unions. And it's gonna be really tough next year, because that money is gonna go away, and they're not supposed to increase the ability for local districts, okay? I mean, to do local levies, right? And so next year could be really bumpy. So I'm worried about it. I wouldn't have, I know that people worked really hard for a long, long time in good faith to do the McCleary thing. And it's probably easy for all of us to throw bombs at the back and second guess them. But there would be a few things I definitely would have done differently if I was in the position to influence it.
As far as the security at schools, do you think that's something that should be kept as a local decision or
I
state mandated?
I think it's local, because I think local leadership and local districts have a better understanding of how their schools are operating. I truly believe that. And you know, why don't we have a statewide school board, for instance? It's kind of like, yikes, right? So I believe in local control on those kind of decisions. I think some of the school districts could do better with their safety concerns. The city of Poulsbo actually put a school resource officer in Kingston, which is in the county. It's completely outside the city. But we were so passionate about getting that school, we agreed to do it. So we had a Poulsbo police officer working in Kingston in order to make sure the kids were safe. So, okay. Question? Anything else?
So I'm also with the ACLU, and one of their main legislative focuses for next session is abolishing the death penalty. So I'd like to know where you stand on the death penalty.
I'm not a real fan of the death penalty. I am a woman of faith, and I'm not. I think sometimes a greater punishment for those really heinous crimes is just lock them up forever, kind of thing. It's also, with our existing judicial system, extremely expensive to go through death penalty trials. So I'm not so sure that that's the right solution. As a Christian, as a woman of faith, I have a little bit of a problem with killing another human being. Okay.
Taxes. Income tax, capital gains tax,
No.
property tax.
No. I'm a fiscal conservative. I call myself a fiscal conservative and a but socially responsible. Meaning that I believe that taxes should be modest, and I think one of the biggest challenges we have at the local levels, all the way up the food chain with government, is using those dollars more effectively. And, I think there's huge amounts of waste at the state level. I know that when I became a mayor, there was huge amounts of waste at the city level. And I think that we need to have people in elected office that do things rather than plan things. We've got planners, oh my heavens, we've got this strategic plan and that plan and this plan and that plan and plan. We're doing a lot of activity, exploring and discovering what's going on and not a lot of doing. And I'm a firm believer in doing and kind of wringing out that whole planning phase kind of, it happens a lot. It happens at the state too. I mean, for instance, we at local government have said very clearly the fixes that we need for the Growth Management Act. So what do? They give the Ruckles House Center $600,000 to go out and study it some more. We know, we in local government, if they would listen to us, know some of the fixes that need to happen. But no, you have to, when political folks study and study and study and they don't do things because when they do them, they can be held accountable. And it frightens them to make hard decisions, and it frightens them to actually do things. And, if you're gonna have people in government, they have to do things, they have to make decisions, rather than, kind of avoid those topics. Local level, I do things. I make decisions, we go. That's what we do.
So, I have a question. I've been thinking about the issue that the ferries have with their long-term planning,
Right.
and I wanted to go back. You mentioned that we have a biannual budget in the state. How much impact do you think that short-term planning with no long-term total investment planning has on our state coffers?
I think we're wasting quite a bit of money on just planning. I do have pretty big concerns about transportation. I'm the vice chair of the Transportation Policy Board for the Puget Sound Regional Council. And I was the chair of the finance committee that did the financing plan for the new 4-county regional plan, okay, which is King, Pierce, Snohomish, and Kitsap County. It's at $200 billion. That's a B number, okay, a $200 billion plan. The problem we have is our gas tax that we pay, it's 49.8 cents per gallon, is dwindling because we've gotten fuel efficient. And that is the main source of cash flows for a lot of our transportation needs. If that becomes too, what I call unstable, in other words, if people buy more Priuses, okay, and it goes down and down and down, most of that money goes for debt service. There's 8.3 cents that actually goes for state highways, et cetera. The vast majority, I think it's almost 45% of that money is just to pay the credit cards. And there's also a whole series of bonds that have been done, especially for the 520 bridge. They're done with something called Garvey bonds, G-A-R-V-E-E, Garvey bonds. Those bonds are backed by federal highway appropriations coming in the future. That's what's going to pay those bonds. Now, if something goes sideways and that federal funding doesn't come, then we're on the hook for those. And there was huge cost overruns on the 520 bridge. Okay, so there's a lot of really big transportation challenges because we've had a couple of what's called mega projects not go exactly the way we wanted. We still don't know what the price tag is for the Highway 99, the tunnel. That'll be in the courts for some time. And when you're doing these mega projects, these are billion-dollar hits. Okay, now $1 billion is 1,000 millions, guys. I mean, it's a lot of money. And the whole state biennium budget, the whole kit and caboodle is $105 billion. Okay, every 2 years, that's what it is. That's everything. That's colleges, that's healthcare, that's everything. So you start talking $1 billion here and $1 billion there, that really hurts. And so, back to your question about transportation, there's some heavy, big, healthy decisions that are gonna have to be made. And Sound Transit's pretty much sucking just about all the air out of the room. So, with their bond issue. So, I don't know if I answered or not. Did I answer it?
Mostly.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so you talked about the, a lot of different aspects of transparency
Yeah.
in the Open Public Meeting Act and how the legislature doesn't, they exempt themselves on it so they can have the caucus, and then the caucus, whatever majority party is controlling the legislature at the time, can make decisions and then spring them on the other party with very, no time to react, to even think about what you're voting on, those kind of issues. So, and another related issue, this how votes are taken, how elections are done. So I'm curious as to your thoughts on any kind of election reform that you would make, either inside the legislature or just the way politicians are elected.
Well, as I said, I don't take money, which actually makes it pretty difficult in a larger race. But in the city of Poulsbo, it was pretty straightforward. I didn't take a dime. I think money in elections is the heart of all evil, or is the root of all evil. And so I'm not advocating for finance reform, in other words, government financing, but I would look at better transparency, which is, people that give money to politicians absolutely have to be declaring. I'm not sure I'm real keen on PACs, for instance. I think the most important thing, though, is if the state of Washington did not exempt themselves from the Open Public Meetings Act, they would have no caucus structures. They couldn't legally do it. There's something called a serial meeting in that law, which means that even if you don't have a quorum present, if one guy gets on the phone and calls the next guy and calls the next guy and calls the next guy, that's called a serial meeting, and it's illegal. So I would really like to see a state legislature that got on the floor of the House and the Senate both and just talk and hash this stuff out, rather than, locking themselves in the room far away where we don't ever get to see what the discussion is. I think it's a tragedy, and it needs to stop. I think people that love their state and love their government should be really upset by that.
So, with the money aspect and the financing of campaigns, we could maybe talk about this later during the break, but I don't know if you're aware, but there are other types of elections, like ranked choice elections, instant runoff type elections, where money is not a factor anymore. Like, money is only a factor in our elections because we have plurality elections. So I don't know if you had any.
No, I don't, and I you'll have to excuse my ignorance. I don't know that. So, I'd be more than happy. As I said, I'm always reading. I love to learn, but I don't know that.
Okay. Anybody else have a question?
Yeah.
Any other changes you'd make in the Growth Management Act?
Yeah, a bunch. Yeah, but I don't believe in the hearings board. What happens is when cases with the growth management, they go to what's called a hearings board, which is, it's kind of a pseudo court. And then what happens is if the hearings board doesn't go your way, then you sue and you go into Superior Court anyway. And it's an unnecessary layer of litigation that's very expensive. The hearings board should go. Just, if you got a problem with something that's coming down regarding the Growth Management Act, just go immediately to Superior Court and get it taken care of. In addition to that, I believe in land use courts. We have specialties of doctors, and we're beginning to have specialty courts. Like, we have the vet court, we have the mental health court, we have drug court. We're beginning to have specialty courts. We really need to have what's called a land use court, because some of the land use laws, some of the legislation and how land use is done is really specific, and there's certain attorneys that have real expertise, but there's a whole lot that don't. So I'd create a superior land use course system and have the GMA stuff go there. We're gonna kill our cities the Growth Management Act doesn't give a sustainable funding source for county services, and yet it's forcing all the growth into the cities. And before we can say, oh, we're choking, we need more space, we have to go double back down and even look for more ways to shove people into cities. That's why you're starting to lose the single-family neighborhoods in Seattle, for instance. It's going to really hurt our cities. And cities are going to be packed full of people, and the counties are going to be impoverished because there's no revenue there. Because our revenue streams come from sales tax and property tax, right? And all the valuation will be in the cities because that's the only place you can develop and build. Okay, so all the money is going to be in the cities. We're going to be packed with people, and all the sociological problems that come with that, and the counties don't have sustainable revenue sources because they're not supposed to grow. I mean, that's effectively what we've got going on with growth management right now. And in the long run, it isn't going to work. You know, I think a lot of the problems that you're seeing in Seattle right now are directly attributable to growth management. And I'm afraid it's going to happen to Poulsbo and Port Orchard and the communities here. I'm afraid the cities are going to get just absolutely just bound up if we don't change it.
Can I clarify with you, you're talking about specialty courts for land, are you talking about administrative courts?
No, I'm talking Superior Court. I'm talking a true court like we have Superior Court. The classic is drug court. That's a Superior Court function. And instead of people going to jail, we send them to drug court and they go through remediation, etc. That's a specialty court. That's what I'm talking about. I'd like to see a Superior Court that functions for land use decisions.
Would you support getting out of some of the administrative courts that we
Yes.
have?
Mm-hmm.
What about family law? I see that as administrative court, like county commissioner, not a county, but a court commissioner versus a Superior Court judge.
I don't know very much about the family law court. I'll be honest, I don't. I think there needs to be some judicial reform, I guess is the best way to put it. And I think some of our courts are not functioning well, and we need others that need to be functioning differently. We have a real problem right now with stuff getting pushed down to the local level. In other words, we send bad guys up to felonies, and they get reduced charges and push them back down to the local municipal court. I don't know if you guys know that, but it's certainly happening. And so, you know, there's some real judicial reforms that need to happen, but unfortunately you're in the separation of powers land, and you know, the legislative branch and the executive branch have a tough time dealing with the processes and procedures of courts.
And then lastly, is there any reform to Second Amendment to gun laws that you would support?
Yes.
What would that be?
Not reform to the Second Amendment, but this is, I've been saying for a long, long time that I think gun owners should take testing so that they understand. My husband is a gun owner. We have guns in our house. And I lived in Alaska for 6 years where everyone had guns, okay? So, he proud Second Amendment supporters. On the other hand, what we have right now is untenable. And so I would like to see an educational program and a licensing program, kind of like when you have a concealed carry permit. You have, you go in, which by the way, you have a concealed carry permit, it doesn't have your picture on it, okay? So you're carrying a gun and a cop pulls you over, and it would be really nice if that information was on a driver's license, for instance. I'm seeing interplaying with the Department of Licensing when it comes to licensing, so that there's a testing requirement for certain kinds of weapons. Not trying to license the guns because there's too many of them. That's a straw dog. Won't work. It's not going to make it.
What types of guns we talking about?
Well, the definition of an assault rifle in 1639, virtually a good portion of the guns that we have fit that definition in the back of that law in 1639. So I believe that people need to be educated and they need to be licensed to have guns. I think is the best way to put it. Not the guns, the people.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Becky Erickson, presentation. There
will be time to talk. I think you're gonna stick around.
I'll stick around for a while, yeah.
We're gonna move on a little bit.
Yeah.
So what I want to do next, for the next portion of our agenda, is to just briefly go around the room and just introduce everybody. There are a couple new